Hello and welcome to this edition of Bayou Time. I'm your host, Keith Whiteside, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And we're always glad to have those people who can come down and tell us a little bit about what's happening for us here in the state and what they're doing for us. We welcome back to the program Representative Garret Graves. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you. Great to be back.
We appreciate that. I know it's one of those things, we know you love coming down here, and we're always glad to see you. So thanks for what you're doing. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that a lot of people are still dealing with, and that is hurricane recovery.
Yeah. Well, look, first, we finished up in Washington on Friday. It's great to be back among normal people again. So good to be here. But look, on Friday, we actually voted and passed the bill out that I think is going to be signed into law that will provide an additional $841 million for Hurricane Ida victims. Wow. So this isn't for governments. This is directly for the people that have been impacted. And this is on top of about $1.3 billion we secured last year.
Right.
And there's actually some additional money that the state can apply for where it may even go up above what would be now about $2.1 billion. So good news there,
right.
and excited that finally has come in to help replenish the coffers. But look, the most important thing that we can be doing is continuing to build hurricane protection, continuing to restore the coast and address pump station issues and other things because we have got to make sure that this community, when a hurricane comes, that it's not everybody evacuating and losing everything, but this place is protectable. We can make the appropriate investments and make this a safe place to live.
Well, you were also part of being able to get some of those funds nationally to support Morganza to the Gulf and all of those. So we appreciate that.
Yeah.
And listen, we've been fighting for that for a really long time. We've been using, our parish monies. We've been using multiple parishes, state money, but you have fought the fight to get us those national dollars as well. And so that's just one of those things that people need to realize. Y'all have been fighting for that.
Now, it's amazing. And I mean, you look at the federal government, you get so frustrated. You know that this project Morganza project started in 1992. And about 2 years ago, we finally were able to, and be clear, I hadn't been there since 92, but
right.
But when we came in, we started working on this, and we were able about 2 years ago to secure the first federal construction funds on this project, and since then have pulled together about $424 million to complement all of the funds that the local community and the states put together on this project. And so really awesome to see that finally starting to move in the right direction.
Yeah, it's just really nice to be able to know. And you talk about feeling comfortable and confident for the next storm, because we know there's going to be a next storm, but just being able to be better prepared for that. And I love the fact that we're looking for extra monies, that additional money that's going to get us to that 2.1 billion or so to help with those people that still need the help. Because as you travel around, I know that you're kind of seeing a lot of that help that's still needed, right?
Oh, it's incredible. And look, you go down to southern areas of Terrebonne Parish. I was down there a few weeks ago, and I mean, some of the areas, quite frankly, some of the homes, it looks like you're 2 weeks after a hurricane. And as you know, we're more than a year later. But the conditions that people are living in some cases are, they're inappropriate. It's not okay to have people living in those conditions. And to know that there's money in the bank and there are people with needs, we have got to connect those dots and get the people the resources they need. But that's why it's so exciting that we're finally able to come back in and get those additional funds to where now we're going to have the resources available to help people.
We're excited about it. One of the things that all of those people that are experiencing issues with knowing what's coming up with storms is flood insurance. And I know it's been a really hot topic. Can you give us a bit of an update about where we are with that?
Yeah, look, flood insurance is really frustrating. I don't think that FEMA has gone through this the right way. As soon as we caught wind of what they were doing in February of last year, we started pushing back and doing conference calls and asking the questions, began filing amendments. We have a bipartisan bill right now that would prevent these new flood insurance rates from going into effect. And of course, there's all those things called risk rating 2.0. We have people whose insurance rates have gone from about $650 a year to $8,000 a year. I mean, just completely unaffordable. Wow. It devalues homes. People, you have X dollars available for your mortgage and insurance and taxes, and if your flood insurance rates are going to go that high, you just can't afford to live in some of these areas, and that's unacceptable. That's why we've been trying to focus on the investments in infrastructure like hurricane protection, because that means people are safe. It means that they're not in vulnerable areas and they don't need to be charged these absurd rates while we're concurrently working to stop FEMA from implementing these crazy prices.
And just trying to offset some of that. And actually, the other thing is to get some answers for how it came up. What formula did you use to go from anybody's flood insurance rate going from 650 to 8,000? I mean, that's lunacy, right?
And on top of it, they are refusing to release the data. They are refusing. And that's one of the things that our bill requires. Our bill requires them to be transparent about this. I've had conference calls with everybody and their mother. Nobody can answer questions. Nobody understands, and they've refused to release the data showing how they came up with these rates. And like I said, it's unaffordable at this point.
Yeah, it's really interesting. As we kind of close out this segment, we'll probably have to spend a little more time talking about it in the next one. But it's interesting that the people that this really impacts, those flood insurance issues. I've got a friend of mine who owns a shrimp factory, and they have people coming in with boats, and they wouldn't be able to afford their shrimp factory flood insurance there down in one of the southern parts of Terrebonne Parish without having this flood insurance regulated. But those are some of the people that get hit hardest, and the fisheries as well.
So you have people that got hit by Hurricane Ida and just completely pounded, trying to rub pennies together to rebuild, and you're going to come in on top of it and cause them to pay multiple times for flood insurance. I mean, it's just a triple whammy that we can't allow to happen.
We can't talk about the fisheries and some of those people and how things were affected. You know, I guess we can't really have that conversation without really thinking about coastal restoration, something that we've really been working hard and fighting hard for many, many years. Tell us a little bit about what's been decided for the support there.
Well, you're exactly right that you can't just go build levees everywhere. You have to look at the role that the coastal wetlands play. They're complementary in function. We recently had a bill signed into law that's going to provide about $80 to $120 million a year for coastal restoration projects in the state of Louisiana. And look, in southern Lafourche and Terrebonne, this area has been some of the biggest beneficiaries of these investments, whether it's along the Fouchon Beach, Caminada, Elmer's Island area, or going over to Whiskey Island. We've made some massive investments. In fact, that project at Fouchon Beach over to Elmer's is the largest coastal restoration project in Louisiana history. Whiskey Island restoration is the largest Barren Island restoration project in Louisiana history. So we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars being invested, and really excited about being able to have that complement the levees and other flood protection projects we're building.
Yeah, and look, those barriers make such a huge difference when we do deal with some of these storms. But I don't think people realize how it limits those floodwaters coming in, and then how that is complementary to Maganza, to the Gulf, protecting us. But those coastal restoration makes a huge difference, and just the difference in looking at hurricanes Ida versus Ian. You know, and how that, you know, those open waters that just can really make a huge difference as we still think and pray for our friends over in Florida and what they're dealing with.
No, you're exactly right. Those barrier islands serve as the first line of defense. They help to break that wave energy. And as you said, when you have miles and miles of open water that just unimpeded, then those hurricanes just get stronger, the winds get stronger, and anything you can do, whether it's a coastal forest, a barrier island, a dune, all those things help to break the wave energy and help to break the storm surge. You don't want that straight up against the levee.
No, absolutely not. One would say it would be a crime not to look into these kinds of things, but that leads us right into that thing. You know, people, I don't think always like to talk about crime, but we've got to address it. I mean, crime has become such an interesting issue because we've not been able to define it very well as we've gone through these last 3 very strange years here in our area, but in general dealing with COVID and then now dealing with post-storm. Crime is just kind of hard to define. We've got to spend a lot of time talking about what to do, how to do it, and I know you've spent some time talking to some of our local officials about that.
We have, in fact, spent a couple of hours last week with Sheriff Sonia here in Terrebonne Parish, and seeing the new facilities and all their capabilities, the investments they're making, the efficiencies they're incorporating in. But, Keith, one thing we have to all keep in mind, just a little bit over to the east of where we are now, New Orleans recently ranked the murder capital of the world. We've seen some big spikes in violent crime in Baton Rouge, and there's really no area that's immune to increasing crime rates. And so we've been working to try to bring some targeted investments. The State Crime Lab, for example, has a 1-year backlog right now in processing evidence. So you may have a crime committed, you may have all the evidence that proves it, but it's going to take 1 year, which means that criminal is out on the streets, out on bond for 1 year, in many cases committing other crimes. So just really trying to work closely with our our law enforcement officials, working closely with our DAs and others, making sure that they have the resources they need, that the laws are written in ways that hold people accountable, that judges are imposing the appropriate bonds and not just slapping people on the wrist and letting them back out. I was talking to one DA up north of here that was telling us that he has some criminals that are out on 3 bonds at the same time. They committed a crime, released on bond, committed a second crime, arrested again, released on bond, and a third time. I mean, that's not okay. It's not.
Yeah.
And so we brought some resources to the table to allow for DNA evidence to be processed, not in a year, but in about a week, week and a half. And so just trying to bring more solutions to the table like that. And at the end of the day, it's all about holding people accountable for their actions.
Well, and efficacy of those processes, right? Because, boy, you don't want something to get thrown out. It's got to be precise when we're holding people accountable.
Yeah.
We got to make sure that we get the evidence right and make sure that the evidence gets logged correct, all of those things. But that takes man hours, and it takes the right information to be able to do that and the right tools to do that. And so a lot of those monies are going towards that, which is exciting.
They are. And look, these investments are all guided by our conversations with, again, folks like Sheriff Saunier and Sheriff Weber and other folks in the region that are, the people that are out there on the street actually fighting crime on a daily basis.
Well, I can tell you we're very fortunate down here that all of our municipalities work so very well together, be it HPD here in Houma, Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's Office, same thing, City of Thibodaux, Lafourche Parish Sheriff's Office. Yep. They all work so very well together. The only thing that I can liken it to is all of our levy boards that work so very well together. And it's got to be nice for people like you to be able to say, hey, listen, if we give this money here, they're going to all work together to do something right with it, huh?
No, you're exactly right. It's critical. And that comparison to levies it's a good example because,
thanks.
You build up levies in one area. If you don't have an adjacent one, it's just going to flood them. And
Right.
Same thing happens with crime. Is that crime, the criminals don't recognize parish boundaries or city boundaries or anything else. And it is important that all those the sheriffs and law enforcement communities have good, close working relationships, and they do, and it ensures that at the end of the day that you're holding the criminals accountable, that those people are being put in jail, they're taken off the streets, preventing them from wreaking havoc in our communities, and at the end of the day, making sure that that we have control of our own community, safe place to raise a family, safe place to have a business, and that's what's most important.
Yeah, as we close out, it's one of those things that I think about, making sure that there's good communication and maybe finding a way to have those bond agencies, those bond systems, much like we did with pharmacy. You can't do polypharmacy anymore. You can't shop one pharmacy to the other. Maybe, just maybe, that's the process that they can use for bonding so that we don't have people coming out on 2 and 3 bonds at one time. And so it's a great point to look into. There's so very much people down here and so very much to our culture and quite frankly, financially down here is the energy issues. And those I know keep getting discussed, and you probably hear from us way too much about kind of finding that balance with energy and how we do that.
Keith, no, look, I don't think you can talk about this enough. Look, what's going on with energy policy in this country today? This is the biggest driver on things like gasoline prices, utility prices, grocery prices, the cost of living. I saw a statistic the other day, 1 in every 4 Americans are having to choose among paying for energy, paying for food, or paying for medicine. Think about that. I mean, that's a false choice. Thousands of dollars, the average American family is now spending more on things like utility costs and refueling their vehicles. Just today, the White House released a statement beating up on OPEC, all these Middle Eastern and foreign countries, because they have decided to cut oil production. And they're beating them up, the White House is, and saying this is a bad decision and that they're a cartel and that it's going to cause prices to go up. Look, the way that you insulate yourselves is you produce more energy. I mean, a few years ago, the United States was entirely energy independent. We have the resources in the Gulf of Mexico to be independent, together with other areas in the United States that have oil and gas. And so it makes no sense for the United States to shut down, stop, prohibit energy production off the coast of Louisiana and then go to Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela, or whoever else and ask them for energy. We just lifted sanctions on Venezuela that has kidnapped Americans. I mean, this just, it doesn't make sense. It's not in Louisiana's interest, and it's absolutely not in America's interest either. So we're trying to push this White House back into sensible energy policy where we are actually entirely energy independent and really have excess resources to send to Europe and other places that's economies are being weakened right now as a result of surging energy prices, which weakens NATO, our military alliance. It weakens Ukraine. So really important that we get this right. And I'll tell you right now, it's not right.
We've got availabilities in our own backyard. Just let us go get it. Right? I mean, we talk all the time with some of the local leaders, down in Fouchon, and it's available. Just let us go do it. And when we find some alternatives to annex that, great, let's do that. But right now, this is what we're kind of dependent upon, and just let us go get it. And let us get it a little cheaper because we can.
Yeah, Keith, you'd have to go back to the Truman administration in the 1940s to get to a point in time where they have leased or made available public lands and waters as little as they've done under this administration. The Truman administration, even Jimmy Carter, who I wouldn't argue is a big conventional energy guy, he leased 100 times more acres of lands and waters for energy production than President Biden has at the same point in time during his administration. I mean, this is just, it's crazy. It's handing a gift to other countries that, quite frankly, aren't big fans of the United States. And the thing that's most aggravating, all of this is being done under this umbrella, under the auspices of climate change and saying, hey, we're doing all this for climate change. Here's the fact. The fact is that under President Biden's strategy, emissions have gone up.
Yes,
they haven't
have.
gone down. They've gone up.
Right.
And under the previous administration, emissions were actually going down an average of 2.5% a year. Last year under Biden, they went up 6.3%. Right. They're going to go up again this year. I mean, and then the other thing that just drives me crazy is that while we have led the world in reducing emissions in the United States, for every 1 ton of emissions we've reduced here, China's gone up by 4. You're exactly right that new energy technologies, wind, solar, whatever, look, they're great when they make sense. We shouldn't ignore them, but you've got to put them in places and use them in situations where they make sense. And in some cases, they just don't make sense. Oil and gas is a proven technology. Natural gas has been the reason we've led the world in reducing emissions, and we've got to build on those successes.
Yeah, and there are options to do that. We just need, and we appreciate you fighting for that. There's a lot of other things that I know. Let's talk about these extra fisheries news. Red snapper, that's kind of interesting here. That gives us the opportunity. I know a lot of people that supplement their meals, they supplement their lives by fishing.
Keith, you would have to go back to, probably 6 or 7 years ago when the Obama administration had said that we were going to get to fish red snapper for about 8 days, 8 days in an entire year.
Right.
And just yesterday it was announced that we're going to get 8 extra days this year. In fact, maybe even more. Back then we used to be able to catch 2 fish. We're going to be able to catch 4 fish. Right. But extra 8 days of red snapper fishing this year. We went a few times and just had so much fun. Yeah. It's great. It's great for Louisiana's economy. The food is absolutely amazing.
Right.
It brings in tourists from all over the country, and it allows Louisiana to showcase what Sportsman's Paradise is all about and just the incredible bounty of the Gulf of Mexico.
Right. And some of the ways to get there is being able to make sure we kind of take infrastructure and working on that. Assumption Parish here getting some really good monies to be able to do some things differently.
Yeah. If you ever drive kind of across the Sunshine Bridge and come down toward LA1 from there, that's Highway 70.
Right.
And that road is kind of a mess, particularly between kind of the Pankerville over to Pierre Part area. They've been trying to come in and do a new overlay on it for a while, and finally able to get about 80% federal funds. There's going to be about a 12 or 13 mile section. They're going to come in and mill it, grind it, and do a new overlay. A lot of times people are always thinking about new roads. They want new roads, which we need them.
Right.
But in this case, this is going to be helping to preserve or helping to bring in a new smooth road. Not going to spill your coffee all over yourself whenever you're driving.
Fix the ones you got so you can take your boat down and go do the extra 8 days of red snapper fishing. Congressman, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and sharing with us these updates. We really appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Great to be back.
Very good. All right, guys, and that will do it for this particular segment of Bayou Time. Don't go anywhere. A whole lot more local programming here on HTV.